Welcome to Sisters Conversations Podcast with your hostess, Letrise Carter. We feature interviews in literary, film, and television, as well as real topics that impact the Black community.
Welcome to Sisters Conversations with your hostess, Letrise Carter, and my co-host, Pillara Henderson-Smith. Today on Sisters Place, we are going to talk about something that's a little bit close and dear to Pillara and myself. You know, she is our in-house wealth and estate planning expert. So we're going to talk about being a caregiver, the importance of a power of attorney, having a power of attorney in place, if you are becoming your parent's guardian or caregiver, what type of legal documents that you need to have in place or can have in place. And if your parents have, say, for example, illness like dementia or Alzheimer's, then if you don't have that power of attorney in place before, I believe it's a problem after, and the Pillara will tell us what steps you need to take in those instances. So, hey Pillara, welcome back, lady.
Hi, Letrise. So glad to be back on. This is a really good topic today that we're going to be talking about.
Yes,
really good topic. As our parents and us as well, as everybody begins to age and live a lot longer, this is one of those things that definitely you're more than likely to encounter or to have a friend or a spouse that is dealing with this. And so I think that this will be very relevant to lots of listeners today.
Absolutely. So like I mentioned, guys, we're going to be talking about, having a will for our parents, power of attorney for health and finances. And then later in the show, I'll share some tips for caregivers that I've learned because, I've recently became a caregiver of my mother. So that's what sparked this conversation because, I'm pretty sure, from talking to several of my cousins, what they have gone through. And there's a quote that I saw. It says, caregiving for an elderly loved one is now the new normal for adult life. And, it's very interesting how, our parents who care for us and took care of us, the roles is now reversed. We're stepping into the role of caring for them. It's like we have a new kid in the house. And it's our parents, unfortunately. For some, their parents are in an assisted living or in an independent facility, but they're still, their caregiver in some form or shape. Pillara, you want to share any highlights on this?
Well, so unlike you, none of my parents live with me. But recently during the pandemic, though, I did kind of have an incident with my father, which is pretty similar to, being a caregiver. So although I'm not a 24-hour caregiver and he is able to live independently, because he does live independently and he lives alone, he is not married. When a health issue did occur, he was on his own. And that became a big issue because he did not have anything in place. And so I know for a lot of people, it's like, okay, here is the attorney that does the estate planning, which is this very thing for lots of people, but, she doesn't have her own house in order here, but he is typical to so many other Black elders. It's not a subject that they want to talk about. They feel like if they do talk about it, then that means you're going to make something happen. And that's just not the case. What you're trying to do is prevent a catastrophe from happening when it does happen. And so although I had been working on him, I had not been able to convince him to do anything. And so when the time arose, there was nothing in place. And I'm sure a lot of listeners can probably relate to this. So we're in the the heat of the pandemic, and I get a telephone call from his neighbor. So my father lives about 900 miles away in a different state, and I befriended his neighbors because he does live alone. I'd given out my card and saying, if anything happens or you feel like I need to know something, please give me a call. So Saturday afternoon, I get a call from one of the neighbors that your father is being rushed to hospital. He's just been taken away on the ambulance. We don't really know which hospital he's been taken to, because in this particular city that he lives in, there's several different hospitals that he could have gone to. But we know that he's just been whisked away and he is not conscious. And so I'm like, oh, okay, this is one of the nightmare situations, right? I don't know where he's going, nor do I have anything that authorizes me to get any information. My father is a veteran. And so I defaulted to, well, maybe he went to the VA hospital. So let's just start there first, right? So I call the VA hospital. You try to explain who the person is. Did someone come in with this description, who you are? And the thing is that I know a lot of people think because you are a relative, because you are a child, because you're a spouse, that you're automatically given information. Well, guess what? They could care less who you are, because there are privacy laws in this country. And because there are privacy laws, that means that they're just not going to give out information just because you say that you are a spouse or you are a child. That's just, it doesn't work that way, right? But I was persistent in calling the places, right, that I called, and I was like, okay, I know you can't give me any information. And so this is a good tip for people. So you kind of preface it. I know you can't give me any specific information. I simply want to know, did someone come in with this description? Yes or no is all I'm looking for. If you can get a yes or no, then you know that you're pointing in the right direction, right? So I was able to at least verify that he was at this particular hospital. So that's the first hurdle, right? So then once I knew he was there, then I began to kind of tackle the nurses station, right? And I know that they're not going to give me any information again. So I called and identified who I was and said, I just want to know if he's stable or if he is awake. I know you can't give me any more than that, right? And so I happened to get a male nurse that was just, I don't know, he just had a kind heart maybe. And so he asked me all these series of questions so that I could sort of identify who he was. Can you tell me some descriptive something about him, his age and this type of thing. And I kind of knew where he might possibly be in there. So I said that too. And he said, okay, I feel comfortable enough knowing that you probably are who you say you are. And I'll give you just this little bit of information. And a little bit of information was, yes, he's here. The doctor has seen him. We are trying to stabilize him. He will be staying overnight. But that was all I pretty much got. Because I didn't have any authority, right? I didn't have any paperwork. I couldn't send anything. I couldn't verify who I was. None of that. But I kept calling back anyway. And so I called multiple times every day. And on one of my calls, he happened to be lucid enough for the nurse who answered the phone to ask him, did he have a daughter? What's her name? Is it okay if we give her a status report? And so at least I had a foot in, right?
Okay.
So my foot in was at least I could get status reports on how he was doing, that type of thing. I couldn't make any decisions for him, but at least I could kind of figure out, they're going to keep him for this amount of time. This is what they're, at least treating him for. This is what we're looking at. And so, without that little piece, of him being aware enough to at least get me that bit of information, there's not much that I could really do. You fast forward, he was in the hospital for quite a while. He was not able to walk. He has degenerated disc in his back. And so with his issues coming in and then being bedridden for so while, you have to regain that ability. Now, he is a little bit stubborn, and so they wanted to send him to physical therapy, and he did not want to go, right? And so then I did this dance with the social worker, because again, I don't have the ability to make any decisions, but I'm trying to help him to make the best decisions.
Right.
And so I'm trying to reach out to the social worker. The social worker is not taking my calls. I set up meetings with the social worker blows me off in the meetings. I mean, and there's a time difference. And so I'm up at 5 o'clock in the morning trying to make a 6 o'clock a.m. meeting call that the social worker blows me off on and stuff. And
wow.
And the issue was because he did not want to go to physical therapy, but they had found a place for him. It was an hour away. And he was refusing to go because it's an hour away. Now you tell me what exactly it is that he needed to do that he couldn't go, but I don't know. So the social worker basically had gotten a little frustrated with him and was like, okay, well, you don't want to go, then we're just going to send you home. So, but you can't send him home because he can't walk. He can't walk and he can't take care of himself. And so that's why I was trying to be so adamant about, getting in touch with the social worker, that hopefully I could persuade the social worker, do what's in his best interest. That's not within his best interest, and he's not making good, coherent decisions for himself.
Right.
Although he's the only person that can make these decisions for himself, right? So in my persistent calling, I was speaking with my father on the phone, and it just so happened that the social worker walks into the room because he's preparing to discharge him, right? And I'm like, put him on the phone right now. Right now. And so luckily we were able to work some things out. I was able to convince him, hey, you need to really do what's in his best interest. And this is not what's in his best interest. And so my big takeaway for listeners on this is that you have to be an advocate, right? If they're not going to advocate for themselves, even though I didn't necessarily have the legal power to advocate for him, I tried anyway, right? And that's when you pull on every little guilt and heartstring that you possibly can in order to get the person to do the right thing, right? So I appealed to the fact of, hey, you are a social worker. Your job is to do this. You are to act in the best interest of your patients. Do you honestly feel like sending him home in the condition that he is in his best interest? Clearly you do not, because you were trying to place him in physical therapy. You're telling me there's no other place that's available for him, even if he has to wait, or even whatever it is. There's nothing else that you can do to try to make this compromise work for him. And of course there was. So, I mean, there happened to be another facility just on the other side of town. There was also a VA facility. And so there was no issues of things. And so, I mean, I'm grateful. And I get that as a social worker in a hospital, you have hundreds of patients and you're trying to do what you can do as quickly and fast as you can. And when you hit a stumbling block, it's hard. But that's why it's really important that someone is there to help navigate, to help advocate for the patient, right? For our parents. Now, I say all that, and the headache that it was is because had he just signed some papers.
Signed a power of attorney, power of health.
It would have been so much easier. So much easier. I would have been able to get all the information that I needed. I would have been able to help make those decisions for him, especially in this moment when he wasn't making good decisions for himself. Clearly, he did not have the right capacity to make some of these decisions. When you are completely incoherent, you are, pretty much unconscious for days. You need somebody that's going to be able to make those choices and decisions for you based on what you've already told them. This is what's important to me. But I didn't know what was important to him. I didn't have that authority. I couldn't do any of those things, and you think how intense this was, and this is around his healthcare, and that's what's most important. But guess what? Because he lives alone, it's not just his healthcare. What's going to happen to his apartment? Is his rent being paid? Are the utilities being paid? And that all turned out to be a huge issue as well. I didn't know how difficult it would be to call a utility company and say, I need to make a payment. And for them to say to me, you can't.
Oh, wow.
You can't make a payment. And I was like, I'm trying to give you money and I can't give you the money. No, you can't. You can't make a payment until we get authorization from the account holder that it's okay. Yeah.
Oh my
How
God.
crazy is that? Right.
That's crazy.
And so I had to wait and hope that things were the way that they should. How was I supposed to know if things were up to date or not? I had no idea. I was just hoping that things would be okay until he got to a point where he could, get on the telephone with me
And
as
authorize you.
Yeah. And so that's basically what we had to do. And even that was a challenge, okay, because then I'm trying to figure out how to do conference calls with him, right? So to call him, call the utility company and to tell the utility company, okay, hold the line. I'm going to try to call him and hopefully he won't hang up and disconnect before I can get him on the line with you.
Oh
so
my
that he can
goodness.
authorize me, right? And then we don't think about the thing, technology today. Everybody wants to send you a verification code on your smartphone. He doesn't know how to use his smartphone to save his life, right? And so I'm trying to tell him how you click on the text message to do the verification so that we can get the information.
Oh my goodness.
Look at the phone. Just don't take your eyes off the phone. And as soon as something pops up on it, press it. Press it.
Oh my God.
All these little challenges that you just don't think about. And I realize that there's so many things in place and we take them for granted and think that they're great. But for our seniors, it is just way too much. So yes, he has a smartphone. Yes, he knows how to answer the phone. Yes, he even knows how to Google a few things, but he doesn't have any clue about how to accept the text message, how to send the text message, none of those things. And so, all these two-step authentication type things and stuff.
It's a lot.
It's a whole lot. So, this experience, this is one of those hands-on practicums, right? And so it really opened up my eyes as to why it's so important to push these documents. Not that I didn't think it was important before, but when it comes to your doorstep, right, it becomes something else completely different. And because I've been on the side of helping people to create these plans and then seeing them play out and how smoothly sometimes they can play out and how great that is, being on the side with my father where nothing is in place. And then what do you do, especially when you're not close and you're far away? And these assumptions that people have are just assumptions. I find it's so hard to explain to people sometimes that I know that it sounds like that's what should happen, but that's just not how it happens. And then I've been on the back end of it where nothing is in place and it's too late. And so your only option is maybe to go to court and be appointed a guardian. And that's just not always an easy task for people. It's expensive for one. So you go from, at least I can talk about my fees, right? So you can go from a power of attorney is $250, right? And for some people, they're like, oh, I don't want to pay $250 for a piece of paper, right? But it's $250. That's what I charge to do a power of attorney for healthcare or a power of attorney for property. And there's lots of different details and things in there. And I know people say, oh, you can pull it off the internet. You can pull a basic form off the internet, but what I'm giving you is not a basic form. That's a template that I believe that's where you start. That's not how it ends. And so there's so many different nuances and things like that. And so, if you come to me, you're coming to for that knowledge, and I'm going to make sure that that document is actually going to do what you need it to do. And so it's got the information in there that you actually want. It has your wishes actually in there. It's executed the proper way. And so there's different things in that, right? So it's $250 investment. If you wait and on the back end and you have to be appointed a guardian, you're looking at a minimum of $5,000.
Oh, wow.
A minimum of $5,000. There's court filing fees that go into that. There's summonses that you have to pay for. If the person does not have capacity to the point where they could not appear in court, a guardian ad litem has to be appointed for them, which is another attorney. And so that other attorney goes out to visit them. And that other attorney is going to charge usually somewhere between $250, $300 an hour. And so you're automatically looking at $1,500 to $2,000 just for the attorney to go and meet with that individual and then report back to the court with the report in their presence. I mean, so it goes from what I would consider a nominal investment to a huge investment, and not everybody can afford a $5,000 payment, right? It's not there for everyone. And now you have constant court supervision. So you don't get appointed as a guardian and then life just goes on. No, you have to report to the court annually, depending on how you are appointed. If you're just appointed as the person over their everyday needs, or if you're appointed over their finances, or you're appointed over both, right? The court wants to know, what is it that you're doing? So if you're appointed over the person, so what does that look like? What does the daily routine look like? Are they going to doctor's appointments, dentist appointments? Are you buying groceries for them? Are you taking them on vacations? Like, what type of extracurricular activity? Like, they want to know a breakdown of everything that you as the caregiver is doing for this person, right? And you have to report that to the court every year. If you're over their finances, you need a detailed to the penny accounting of all their money to report to the court every year. So that means if they're getting a Social Security check or they're getting pension, and you go to the grocery store and spend $5 because they want some ice cream, you need to account for that $5 because you bought ice cream. You need to buy monthly toiletries, you're buying clothes, you're paying, insurance or more, whatever it is you're doing, is a to the penny accounting that you have to give to the court every year. And guess what? If you don't make those reportings, then you can be found in contempt.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So it is a serious thing when you are appointed as a guardian. And once you're appointed as a guardian, it's serious for the person as well, because you're stripping them of all of their rights. You're saying that they can no longer make those decisions for themselves. So that means they can no longer vote. They can no longer drive a car. I mean, you're taking everything from them. And so it's really important that that's not something that's jumped to in haste.
Yes.
Right? And it's really important just to have those conversations up front, because to make sure you know what it is that they want, especially if they get to a point where they can't speak for themselves. What is it that they want? How do they want to be cared for? What does quality of life mean to them? It's really
Oh, that's a lot. Being a caregiver is real. It's oh my goodness. So I know one of my questions that I have, a couple questions for you. Talking about caregivers, living here in Illinois, do caregivers have rights to make decisions for the person they're caring for if they don't have power of attorney over their I guess caring for them? Like, can they make decisions for them without being their POA?
So obviously the answer is always it depends, but the blanket answer is no. It's no. And so I know a lot of times people kind of feel like, well, I'm the spouse, and so I'm caring for my spouse, and so I should be able to make those decisions, or I'm the child and the parent needs me, and so I need to make those decisions for the parent. But the ultimate answer to that is no. It's not an automatic thing. It just doesn't happen that way. If, for instance, your mother took ill tonight and you had to rush her to the hospital, the first thing they're going to ask you is, do you have a power of attorney for healthcare? Right? That's the very first thing they're going to ask you. And if she is lucid enough and has enough capacity, and if you don't have one, they're going to ask her if she wants to create one, right? If she want to prepare one. The problem is a lot of times when you get them sort of like on the spur of the moment thing, all you are getting is sort of the template of it, right? So it doesn't have any really detailed information in there. A lot of times they're not executed properly at the spur of the moment type thing, because a lot of people don't realize. So like, I'm doing this in the hospital. So, oh, nurse, can you come over here and sign this for me? Because I need to have a witness. Guess what? The statute says your nurse cannot sign that for you.
Wow.
Yeah, no healthcare professional, nor any relative of a healthcare professional can sign that for you, nor family member. None of your family members can sign that for you, nor the person that you want to name as the agent. They can't sign the document for you. So, you know, when you have this and you think that you're doing something, basically, and you have a worthless piece of paper, right? And there's not this automatic thing because I'm here, I can make decisions for you. Now, Illinois does have a law that's called a surrogate law, right? And it's a little scary to me, the surrogate law. So the surrogate law says that, okay, so if you don't have a power of attorney in place, no one has been appointed as your guardian, someone can step forward and say that I will act as your surrogate. So Letrise, I am going to come to the hospital and I'm going to say, I'm going to act as Letrice's surrogate. Now, here's the thing. The law kind of gives a hierarchy of what that could look like. Do you have a spouse? If you don't have a spouse, do you have adult children? If you don't have adult children, do you have parents? And it is to try to put something in place so that somebody can make a decision for you, right? You're in the hospital and they need to take you off of ventilation or something, and they're looking for someone to help make this decision for them. So if someone is willing to step up and take that responsibility, then the law says, okay, we'll let you do that. But the kicker is that it could be a stranger. So we are friends, but I have really no idea as to what you would want and not want. But I can show up at the hospital and say, well, you know, her mom doesn't have capacity to do it. And Simone is out of the country with her, you know, on vacation. And so, you know, I'm just going to do it for her. I'm going to step up and and they'll say, okay.
Oh, wow. Thank God I have a POH.
Right. Okay. Then you can be her health surrogate.
Wow.
That's a little scary, right? That's a little scary.
That's very scary.
Can't do all the things that a person that has a power of attorney for healthcare can do, but that person can say it's okay to unplug her.
Ooh.
A person can say that.
Wow.
Yeah. And so there's one of those things where you don't want a default. And that's exactly what you get. It's a default. And some of that is why there's a little bit of confusion, why people think, well, I'm the spouse and I can make decisions. Well, it's not because you're the spouse that you can make decisions. It's just because that surrogate law is in place and because there is a hierarchy and you fall within that hierarchy. Right? And so, yes, you can. So there has been instances in the state of Illinois that I am aware of where there's mistaken identity, right? And so someone has come in thinking that this person is their loved one and has authorized them to be, you know, taken off of life support, and they pass away. And then they realize, oh, this was a mistaken identity. They contacted me and said, this was my loved one that was missing. And actually that wasn't my loved one, but they are still protected, right? Because they have come in basically under this surrogate to say, okay, yes, I will step in and take this responsibility and make this decision for them because they can't make this decision on their own. Oh my
goodness.
Yeah.
That's so scary. Oh my God. That makes me very nervous, especially given with everything with my mom, because, you know, I know we had discussed before, you know, if there's no power of attorney in place for a parent who has Alzheimer's or dementia, once they can't make cohesive decisions on their own, you can't even put a POA in place.
No. So the requirement in order to have a power of attorney for property or healthcare is that person, the principal, the person that's putting it in place, they have to have capacity. They have to understand what it is that they are doing, right? And so capacity is a little bit different than you might, think. It's not necessarily at the heightened level, but they need to be aware of what the document is, what the document will do, who the person is that they are naming, what that person will be able to do on their behalf. And that's what is really important, that you don't wait to the 11th hour for these types of documents. You don't wait until there's confusion and they don't know what's happening, because they can't do it then, right? Early onset, when you have early onset of some of these things, sometimes you get up in the morning and you are completely fine. But by the time the evening comes, you have no idea what's happening. And it's usually because you're tired, right? You're just tired and things are weighing on you. So like for that person still does have enough capacity to put these documents in place. Attorneys will come in and, we'll ask a series of questions. And if we are unsure about something, then we'll say, okay, let's have your doctor, your family physician, check you out. And let's make sure we can get the okay from the family physician that you are aware and you understand what's happening and what's going on, so we can get these documents in place, right? But once you get to a place where it's completely set, dementia is there. Alzheimer's is there. It's too late. It's too late. And your only option to make decisions for that person is to go the route of petitioning the court for guardianship. That is your only route. And unfortunately, not everybody even has the ability to be appointed by the court, because there are certain parameters and rules that you have to be able to abide by, and that you have to, there's, requirements you have to be able to hit in order to be approved as a guardian. And so you might be the perfect child, but maybe you don't have a squeaky clean record. And because you don't have that squeaky clean record, guess what?
You can't be pure. You can't be a guardian.
You can't be the guardian.
That's good to know, because that's another topic.
Yeah.
Oh wow. And and does that same rule apply to, like, because I know to having a will as well, like if they don't have one? Because I was going through my mom's stuff and I'm learning a lot, having to go through her stuff. She doesn't have a will.
Yeah. And so again, you have to have capacity in order to execute a will. And if you no longer have capacity, then you cannot. And so now you're looking at the default intestate, the laws of the state. What does the laws of the state say? This is what's going to happen to your property, right? There might have been some foresight on certain accounts and things. And then that's what you begin to look at and say, okay, now it's time to take a serious inventory of what does this person own? So if they own a checking account, a savings account, if they have any stocks or bonds or IRA, 401k, that type of thing, then you want to say, okay, now it's time to figure out what are all these things they have, and let's figure out how they're all titled, and if a payable on death or a transfer on death was put in place. If those things have been put in place, then you sort of have a workaround, right? Because those are contractual things, and they've already said, this is who I want to have this. Right. And so, which is good, because no, you don't have a will, but you had the foresight to say, when I opened up this checking account, I knew if something happened to me, I put a payable on death, and I put Letrise down as my payable on death. And so now when I die, this money goes to Letrise, right? Which is great. And so you sort of have a workaround of things. And so you're going to have to figure out where you're at. Now, it could come, to a point that not everything did have a workaround. So maybe they own a home and they didn't do anything with that. And so now that home has to go through probate. Okay. If the idea is that you want to sell it, right? It has to go through probate because you have to get clear title. And so now something that could have been taken care of years ago, through a will, through a transfer on death instrument, that type of thing. Now you're looking at 6 months to a year delay with that, because the court process is 6 months to a year. You have to give creditors an opportunity to come forward, and there's notices, and it just takes a while. So now you're trying to figure out if there's a mortgage on the property, you have to maintain the property, right? So now you got to pay 12 more months of a mortgage. You have to pay if there's utilities and things that have to be kept up, right? In Illinois, you can't turn off the heat, right?
Oh, wow.
Right? It doesn't matter that no one is living in the property.
You got to keep it on.
You have to keep the heat on because it will, you can have an issue of pipes bursting.
Pipes bursting,
right?
yeah.
And so now you have another fee. And you don't think about the fact in the summertime, the grass needs to be cut, especially if they live in a community that has a homeowners association. So homeowner association fees have to be paid. The grass have to get, like, there's all these upkeeps and all this extra stuff that has to happen. But if you had put a couple of things in place.
Yeah. And it's wow. And you know what? That comes back to our community not being educated on stuff like this. Because I know my mom has life insurance policies in place, and she has all the beneficiaries. She has some kids on one and some kids on another. But I promise you, there's kids of hers that are not on one. They're on the other one. But then, I was like, how did you do that? And she goes, I just did it that way. So those are in place. But, I have, I think I have a sibling or two that probably think, oh, we're going to get all this money from our policy. She has the bare minimum that is going to bury her. Yeah. And we might still be short. So,
yeah. We've talked a little bit briefly about insurance, and clearly I'm not an insurance person. Right. However, with our parents living longer, most of them have term life insurance. In our community, we don't really look at insurance as an investment. And so we don't normally have a lot of universal insurance things that it's, gaining and that type of thing. We have term life insurance. And what you have to keep in mind, term means that it's only for a term. And that term is usually 20 years. And so a lot of times our parents will age out before that policy will pay out anything, right? Mm-hmm. So they will age out of the policy before they actually die. And so where you think you have money that's going to help with burial expenses or to leave a little something to somebody, you actually don't have anything. You have nothing. And so they paid how many ever years for this policy, and it's worthless at their death. It's absolutely worthless at their death. So, that was the type of policy that my grandmother actually had. She passed away earlier this year at 95, 96. I always want to make her younger than what she is. So I think 96 is how old she was when she passed away. But she did have insurance, but she outlived her policy.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think I need to find out, because we have Granny Ida. Her birthday is next month. She'll be 102. And I need to find out what policies she has. I need to drop that bug in my cousin's ear because he's her caregiver. So I'm gonna send him a text after our podcast and just kind of drop that, hey, this is real, just want to, because she'll be 102, and just check and make sure her policies are not term. And because I promise you, she's already outlived her. If she has term policies, she's probably
already outlived
them.
Yeah. So my grandmother, she outlived her policies, and my mother and her siblings did pre-need for her. And so when they realized that she was going to outlive her policy, then that's when they went to the funeral home, clearly prior to, her death, who knew exactly when that was going to happen, and began to, okay, this is the plan. We need to pay for, these are all the different things around her burial, that needs to be paid for, so that when that time actually does come, this piece is already taken care of, because there isn't an insurance policy that's going to kick in and pay for this. There isn't one.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's it's unfortunate that it takes for us sometimes to get our parents, or something to happen for us to start looking at our parents, looking at their, their circumstances, whether they got life insurance, what, if they got a power of attorney in place, if they have a will in place, because, my aunt had told me, well, she said, I wrote my will on a piece of paper, baby, and it's in the Bible. I said, that is not binding.
No.
I'm sorry.
Some states will recognize a holographic will. So that's a will that's written in the person's handwriting and signed. Some states will not. Some states you still need to have proper attestation. So even though I wrote it and it's in my handwriting, it still needs to be witnessed by two disinterested people, and everybody has to sign in each other's presence. And so that means I can't write it and sign it and then call my neighbors over and say, can you sign this saying that it's my will? And then the next day call another neighbor over and sign it. Like, there's still all these formalities that have to happen. And so unfortunately, a lot of times that means nothing. I've met someone a few years ago, and they thought as long as things were notarized, then it was good. So I've notarized it. And I said, do you understand what a notary actually does? Because I don't think you understand what it does. Well, it authenticates it and it makes it a legal binding document. No, a notary basically says that the person is who the person says they are, that I, the notary, have looked at your identification, and I can attest to the fact that you are who you said you are based on this documentation that you have given me that I've requested of you. That's all the notary is doing. So it's authenticating a signature, right? So the signature says Pillara Henderson-Smith. The notary has looked at my ID, has looked at me and the ID and said, that's the same person. And then has taken the signature and said, that's the signature off of this ID. And I am now notarizing it, saying that this is the person that it says that it is. That is all a notary does. That's all it does.
Yeah. And that is, and that's unfortunate. That's the miseducation in our community, that they think, oh, it's notarized, so that makes it a legal binding document. I'm like, who told you that? And I don't understand where they got that from, but that's really big in our community, in the Black community.
It
They
is.
think just going getting something notarized, oh, it's binding. I can take this piece of paper to court and the judge will be on my side. I'd be like, the judge will not be on your side.
No, the judge is not going to be on your side. Sorry.
Oh,
the judge would say, yes, that is you. And I need some more facts, please. Yeah, that's just so, like when you're signing your mortgage and stuff, you can't say, well, I didn't sign that. That's not me. Right now, there's proof to say, no, you presented your ID. The notary was there to say, yes, this is you. Guess what? You are responsible for this debt.
Absolutely. So guys, for everyone that's listening, you take a look at your parents' finances, look at their documents, see what they have in place, what they don't have in place, and reach out to, if you're in the state of Illinois, reach out to Pillara. Or if you're not in Illinois, reach out to one of your local attorneys so that you can get something in place if your parents are coherent. Coherent is going to be the key word here. Coherent.
Yeah, they have to have capacity. If they no longer have capacity, then they can no longer execute any of these documents that we were talking about.
Yeah, they got to be coherent. So, don't be like, okay, my mama not all quite there, or my daddy not quite all there, but we gonna draw up a will. I hate to be that attorney who actually allows you to do that, because they should not allow you to draw up any type of wills, any type of power of attorneys. If your parent has an illness and they're not at the capacity to understand what they're signing, to understand what they're putting in place, make sure it's time to have a conversation, pretty much.
Yeah. Most attorneys are not going to allow you to do that, because most attorneys don't want to lose their license over something like that. It's unethical, and we could definitely lose our license to allow that type of thing to come into place. And especially those are the documents that are contested. And so you find yourself in court trying to explain and what happened and why this was put in place. So you don't want to find yourself in that position at all. And I think most attorneys who are very ethical will turn you away. It's always difficult when you have to tell a potential client no, right? When they get news that they don't want to get, but I have to do it all the time. You get those calls that, oh, we need to put a power of attorney in place because mom's in the hospital or dad's in the hospital and they can't make any decisions. And we are trying to figure out what to do for their well-being. And I have to say it's too late. I'm sorry. You can't put anything in place at this point. Your only option is to petition the court to be a guardian.
Now, here's a thought. So say, for example, my mom knows who I am. She knows I'm, her caregiver. She knows I'm the one child who, makes decisions for her that are for her, for her best interest. If she got put in the hospital and she tells them, because she doesn't have a POA in place. Well, she has one. I don't know the authenticity. I think I said that right. The authenticity for the one that she has in place that she did in Wisconsin. We're going to examine that, and I'm definitely going to be sending that over to you for you to review. But just in case that is not completely authentic, if she tells them, knowing no, I want my daughter Letrise to be, make decisions. You can give her any information about me. Does that even stand the ground? If she tells them and they have her sign something, if she's coherent.
So what they would have her to sign is a HIPAA authorization.
Okay.
So and a HIPAA authorization would then allow you to have access to her records. And so this is a piece in this, right? So it will allow you to speak to her doctors. It will allow you to have access to her records without the hospital having the threat of being sued and that type of thing, because all those documents are private. But the ultimate decisions still are down to her. So even if she says it's okay for her to make a decision for me, it's not really legally binding, if that makes sense. So as long as she is still able to make decisions, they're going to defer to her. And especially if you think one thing should happen and she thinks something else should happen and it becomes contentious, what the hospital is going to say is that we have an obligation to keep her stable. We will keep her stable. You need to go to court. You need to go to court and you need to become her guardian. And until that happens, we're not really going to make any decisions for her, right? We're just going to keep her stable. Now, and this is another thing. So there has been instances too, where sometimes the hospital feels like you, the parent, you, the child, you, the whoever, you're not making good decisions. And so guess what? We are going to go to court and we are going to petition the court to become the guardian. And then we, the hospital or nursing home or care facility, will make all the decisions for your loved one and not you.
And that's not something you ever want.
That is not something that you ever want. And so you need to be aware that those types of things can happen. In every state, there's public guardians as well. And so there's someone or someone's appointed by the state simply for that reason. When there is someone in the hospital and there's not someone that has, stepped up for them, there needs to be someone that's going to make those decisions for them. And so there are public guardians, and that's not who you want making decisions for you. I don't think anybody wants that. I mean, that's a complete stranger.
Complete stranger. And I feel like one of those movies where the hospital's like, well, we can free up this bed.
And when those instances happen, there's a lot that people don't understand, and it seems on the surface like this is just wrong. Like, how can you do this? Like it makes no sense. But care is not free.
Yeah.
right? And so then how is it that you get funds for someone's care? So if I am a public guardian and I'm appointed, your guardian, I'm going to look and see what assets do you have? Do you have a checking account? Do you have a home? Do you have an art collection? What is it that we can sell, right, in order to take care of you? But guess what? Because I am your guardian, my time is not free.
Yeah.
And so guess who gets to pay me? When I sell your house, I also get paid out of that because right. And so for a lot of people, like that just seems like that's completely unfair. How do how does that happen? And it's like, well, because you didn't put things in place that should have been put in place. And then this is the default that can happen. And yes, maybe it has the appearance sort of on the surface of not being fair, but it is very fair. When you go to work, you want to get paid. Everybody, when you go to work, you want to get paid. You don't go to work for free and say, I'm just going to work because it's just a fun thing to do.
Right.
You want to give me a paycheck, do. If you don't, right? But in that, you don't get to say what that person is being paid, right? What's my reasonable fee? My reasonable fee might be $300 an hour. And you like, I'm going to pay her $300
an hour.
She sold the house and now she gets $300 an hour, right? That might not seem fair, but that could be my reasonable rate of income, right? And those doctor bills have to get paid. If you go to
they sure do.
The people at the facility, the nurses, the aides, everybody has to get paid. And so where does that money come from? It comes from selling off your assets. And no, you don't necessarily want a stranger making these decisions, but sometimes it comes to a point that somebody has to make these decisions. And so then you have court oversight, and you have this person who this is their job, is to try to make these, neutral decisions for you.
So a lot of times when I be seeing those estate sales,
sometimes those estate sales may be coming from that. Yes. So estate sales are one of those things where if somebody passes away and if they may have something in place, and so there's an estate sale, but it could be too, this person is now going into a home, or this person has had a guardian appointed and they need to, sell off the assets in order to pay for their care.
That's so sad. Oh, wow. So it's like, wow, we're selling off your assets. So now your children and no one, they won't get it.
Yeah, nobody gets anything because everything in those particular instances, usually everything is sold.
Wow.
Usually everything is sold, right? Yeah, they're looking at what is your complete portfolio, whatever that is, and what is it that we can sell in order to have assets for you. So everything gets sold down, the money gets put into an account, and then the guardian is still accountable to the court. They have to say, so we sold the house for $300,000. There was, $10,000 in the checking account. There was $5,000 in the savings account. So at the end of it, this is all the money that we had. And now over this past year, this is what we've spent the money on, right? So we had trust, we had guardian fees, we had hospital fees, we had assisted living fees, we had clothing fees, we had medication fees, whatever that is. Now this is the new balance, and we're starting that new fiscal year under this balance. And it could be that that person maybe they do still receive some type of income. Maybe they get a Social Security check. Maybe they are getting dividends from some, stock or something. Maybe they decided, well, this particular stock or this particular asset, we're going to keep it in this investment because it's making enough money that we can have some longevity with it. It just depends on, what it is. But that guardian still has to give a very detailed account to the court of what's happening, right? And so you get to a point where you could end up destitute. And so in the state of Illinois, destitute is you have less than $2,500 to your name.
Oh, wow.
And then that's when federal services begin to kick in, right?
Okay.
So Medicaid, Medicare, that type of thing. But that might mean the facility that you're in, now it changes. right? Where you were in a private facility because you had extra assets to pay for these things. Now you're not in such a great place.
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Oh,
know,
wow. Yeah.
but it's because you don't have the resources, to pay for it anymore. And that's like it's part of a scary thing because we are living longer. And so long-term care is a serious issue that you have to think about. What does that look like? And especially for someone who is alone.
Yeah.
For whatever reason they are alone. Maybe they've outlived the people in their family. So what does that look like to them? Or maybe they, never got married, never had kids, or whatever the circumstance, might be. What does that look like? What does that look like?
Yeah. 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 Oh, wow. So a lot is, I'm glad we're learning this tonight because it kind of makes me think in the back of my mind, thinking about those long-term benefits that, your employer offers to you that, a lot of times we always pass on it. Like, oh, I don't need that, but it's something that we can consider because that's something that that's one of the benefits that we can take with us if we ever left an employer, so that you have that in place because, God forbid, I know my primary doctor recently, she did a early retirement because she had medical reasons. And she said she wrote us a nice letter. She's going on long-term disability for,
Oh, wow.
due to her health. So she's like, it's kind of like a semi-early retirement from medical, but she's going on long-term disability. And I'm like, oh my goodness, wow. But she had that in place so that she can be able to do that. I think, she looked like she's about ready to retire anyway. But, but to have to go out for medical
earlier than what she thought it was going to come. Yeah.
So it's just, this is a lot to think about. And, from, me, I'm always thinking, okay, I need to make sure I got everything in place. I have my will, I have my POA. So I'm like, okay, I know I have one more to do, POA over my finances. That's coming in property. That's next. Once I buy my house, that's next. Because I want to be set. I don't want to be ever, I don't want to be a burden. And, not to say that, our parents become our burden, but in a sense, they kind of have because they weren't educated on all these resources and that they should have, things that they shouldn't have, because that's not something that their parents had. They passed, back in the day, to bury a loved one at the family church cemetery, they took up an offering among the family, to bury their loved ones. And it wasn't as expensive.
Well, yeah. And you think about insurance has been around for a long time, but the issue is that when the insurance agents came to our communities, they offered us teeny tiny premiums.
That cost an arm and a leg.
They cost an arm and a leg, right? And it was on the background of, oh, you need this to bury yourself, right? There was never any discussion about this can be used as an investment. This can be used to leave a legacy for your family. And so even though they were paying all this money for all these years, they might have a $5,000 policy.
Yes.
Maybe a $10,000 policy. And that would be a huge policy, right?
Yep.
That's a huge one. But they paid all this money in. They paid that $10,000 over and over again and not even realize it. Because it's ingrained. Oh, I need this policy because of that very reason. I don't want to be a burden on my kids. I need to leave this so they can bury me, right?
Yep.
Not realizing that all they were doing really is just making the agent,
wealthy.
Yeah. And it was this kind of those agents at that time too, in the beginning, they drove around to everybody's house and collected their premiums.
Yes, they did. I remember growing up, my mom's insurance agent coming to the house every month on the second.
And they would collect the premiums. And guess what? If you lapsed, then suddenly you don't have any insurance. And it was just that simple, that easy. It doesn't matter that you've come every day for the past 15 years. That one time that I can't pay,
Yep.
or I pay late,
Yep.
I no longer have a policy.
Yep.
And so it's only been recently, I think, that we are even sort of even having this little bit of knowledge, that these policies can actually be used to better our families, right? So while I am young, whatever that looks like, and I have a young family, if something happens to me, then I can actually have this insurance in place that will, give that cushion that will replace whatever income I might be bringing in, or even if I'm a stay-at-home parent, it will allow the surviving spouse or relative that's taking care of my kids to have child care, right? To help take care of my child. I mean, child care could be someone in the house, a babysitter, but it could also be going to daycare or the after school program, the morning program. There's that extra money in there, along with maybe there's even some money to make sure that my child can go to a private school or can go to college, or have a little something for a down payment on a house, or to start a business. We wonder sometimes, how is it that the other seems to have so much more? And it's because it's not always what they work for. I know they like to think it's what they work for.
No, you was given that.
Right? But it's not. It is the fact that somebody had some forethought and said, this is a legacy that I want to leave. And so whatever that legacy should look like. So when I pass away, you are everyday Joe. However, when I'm gone, I have put things in place to, guess what? Now you're an overnight millionaire.
Yep.
Right? You went to bed with a penny in your pocket. You wake up tomorrow because of things that I have put in place, and you have $1 million. And guess what that allows you to do? It allows you to have a step up, which means it's going to allow you to give your kids a step up. Yep. And so, not to say that somewhere in there, you didn't go to school and you didn't study hard in college and you got a degree, but I'm not dismissing that. That's not dismissing. But what I'm saying is that you didn't start at zero. And so often we like to think, you started at zero, but you didn't. When you got married, your parents gave you a down payment on your house. You didn't start at zero, right? And so your mortgage and your interest rate is completely different from mine, even though we live right next door to each other.
Hello.
Right? Yep. And so there is a huge difference and a huge disparity in there. And it's because once you pull the curtain back, it's not apples to apples behind the curtain. Not at all. It's apples and oranges behind the curtain.
Yes.
They're two completely different scenarios.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you don't start the same, you will never end the same, right? When you have a 100, 200, 300 year lead, systematic lead. Let's just put that out there. It's a huge difference. So it's not even like, you think about like the GI Bill.
Yeah.
We both went and fought, right? My grandfather went and fought. White man's grandfather went and fought. White man comes back, he gets the benefits of the GI Bill. You get to go to school, you get housing, you get a loan. My grandfather gets nothing. So, it's a huge, huge difference. So that means you've been in your house, right, for 50 years before I can even get a mortgage on a house. And guess what? My interest rate is 2-3 times what yours is.
Yep.
You jacked up the price of the house 2-3 times than what is actually worth. I mean, you're starting in this hole, and it's almost impossible to dig out of it. It's really, really, really difficult to pull out. And that's not to say that we haven't made strides and we're not still pushing, but sometimes it's difficult.
Yeah,
it's difficult.
It is. It really is. Ooh, Pillara said a mouthful today, y'all. A mouthful. I'm just going to give y'all a few tips for those of you who are caregivers. It's so important. Just because you're a caregiver, self-care for yourself is going to be important for you to indulge in it daily. Daily acts of self-care, even if you just take some 30 minutes quiet time just to yourself, you will be amazed at how good you will feel. Join a support group. I have joined one. It's been wonders. I've been talking to other family members, who have been doing this caregiving thing for their parents, and I have heard some horror stories. And even though hearing the horror stories from them, they also give me encouragement. Find your moments of joy. Recognize when you're burned out. And when you can recognize and see that you're burned out, you need somebody to be able to step in. And, if you're caring for a parent like I am, your siblings, hey, guess what? They need to step in. Somebody needs to step in and utilize and take advantage of, if you're in Illinois, and I'm pretty sure all other states, they have these programs. Illinois has several programs. They have the Illinois Senior Program that offers housekeeping, in-home care programs, Meals on Wheels, activities and events where they'll come and take your parents to it's like adult daycare for like 4 to 5 hours a day. That is a true blessing. And I should not be happy about that, but I am ecstatic about that because that is something that, I've signed my mom up for, so I can, so you can have that break. You can get that break so that you can be like, it's like a woosah moment. At least for me, it's like a woosah moment. There's several programs that are available through the Alzheimer organization. There are several programs through the Illinois Department of Aging. I'll drop their links on our social media. We got a couple blog posts that's going to be coming out later this week on this particular topic, and some nice tips so that you all can, as caregivers, you can, find time to take care of you. And most important, stay healthy. Because if you're not healthy, there's no way you can be able to help the person that you're caring for. And it's okay to say no. It's okay to say no. Don't beat yourself up. You cannot, you're not a superhero. You're human. You will make mistakes, and it's okay. And remember, our parents, if you're caring for a parent or a loved one who is elderly, remember they do revert back to, it's like you have another child in the house. Just remember to be kind and gentle, even though there are times, you're probably cussing in the back of your head, because I've done it. Pillara, you want to add anything?
So those are all really, really good tips. And so obviously ditto to everything that Letrise just said. Make sure that you are taking care of yourself, because if you are on empty, there's no way that you can give what you need to give. And so the only way to fill yourself up is to have some self-care. Sometimes it seems like it's being selfish, but it's not. It is self-care. You have to keep yourself full so that you can help take care of your loved one. And my big advice would be, just start today with all the things that we were talking about, putting things in place. Don't worry about what you don't have. Figure out where you're at right now today, and just start today, making sure things are in order. What can you do today to make tomorrow better for yourself, to make tomorrow better for your parent, the person that you are caring for, and figure out what their wishes are. Have a conversation, right? That's the biggest thing. Have a conversation.
Absolutely. Well, guys, that is our show today. Make sure you check back with us. Our podcast season, we're getting ready to go on holiday break. We'll be back
a couple of months.
Yeah, we're getting ready to go on holiday break from November, December, and January. We'll start back up recording. We got 2022 is going to be a great year. Pillara and I are going to put our heads together. We're going to we got to come up with some more. This is wealth and money, wealth and estate planning. And, 2022, there's some experts that we're going to bring on the show, some money wealth experts, there's an author that I follow. I've fallen in love with her, and I'm definitely going to try to get her on the show. And we're also going to know, one of the things that Pillara had mentioned to me, a lot of times, we don't want to have that conversation with the funeral homes and see what those costs are and those steps in the process. But I think that is a conversation that we need to have. And so we have some guests that we will be bringing on in 2022 to help you guys understand the full process for the funeral homes, the transition process, making sure you know what to do, instead of scrimmaging around, making phone calls at the last minute. Know the process. So there's a lot more to this whole the whole process of estate planning. Estate planning is not just putting power of attorney in place, putting a will in place, having all your I's and T's crossed, but it's a process of other things that involves making sure that you have everything in place, that if something were to happen to you tomorrow, your kids can go to a safe or whatever, or a lock box or deposit box. And that's something I think we need to talk about, where you should keep your important legal documents.
Okay.
Should you keep them in the house, or should you keep them in the bank in a safe deposit box? Because I watched a movie and I was like, oh, I got all my stuff at home and I got it in a safe. I think I should get it out the house just in case, there's a fire, or somebody, I don't know.
We'll talk about it. We're
gonna have to talk about it.
It definitely needs to be in a fireproof location. So it needs to be in a fireproof location, but it needs to be easily accessible. So sometimes people have safe deposit boxes at a bank and nobody knows that exists.
Yeah.
So it's not going to do you a whole lot of good.
Yeah. See, it's just all these little things. I have a slew of stuff that we can talk about next year when podcast season 2 kicks off for Sisters Conversations. I'm so excited. Ooh. But we're going on break because so we can take so we can have this is going to be our self-care. Our self-care. We're going to rejuvenate. We're going to come back fully charged, and we're going to have some good stuff for y'all. Woo.
I'm looking forward to it. This has been a really good year, a really good experience, a fun experience. I think it's grown me a lot, and I'm really excited to be able to just really reach the community this way. So I'm looking forward to what we're able to do in the future.
Yes. So until then, you guys be safe and have a safe and happy holidays, and happy New Year as well, 2022.
That's right. Blessed holidays, and an abundance in 2022. We'll see you guys next year.
All right.
Thanks to our special guests for joining the show today. Be sure to follow us on your favorite streaming channel so you don't miss a show. We can be heard on Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and YouTube at Sisters Place. Visit our website, www.sistasplace.com, to learn more about us.